2. Hello, bruvs. Hello, bruvs. We're back with The Little Friend by Donna Tartt. We start with chapter 1. The dead... Let's go to the page so you see it. Chapter 1. The Dead Cat. 12 years after Robin's death, no one knew any more about how he had ended up hanged from a tree in his own yard than they had the day it happened. People in the town still discussed the death. Usually they referred to it as the accident, though the facts, as discussed at bridge luncheons, at the barbers and bait shacks and doctors' waiting rooms, and in the main dining room of the country club, tended to suggest otherwise. Certainly it was difficult to imagine a 9-year-old managing to hang himself through mischance or bad luck. Everyone knew the details, which were the source of much speculation and debate. Robin had been hanged by a type of fiber cable not common, which electricians sometimes used, and nobody had any idea where it came from or how Robin got hold of it. It was thick, obstinate stuff, and the investigator from Memphis had told the town sheriff, now retired, that in his opinion a little boy like Robin couldn't have tied the knots by himself. The cable was fastened to the tree in a slipshod, amateurish fashion, but whether this implied inexperience or haste on the killer's part, no one knew. And the marks on the body, so said Robin's pediatrician, who had spoken to the medical examiner from the state, who in turn had examined the country coroner's report, suggested that Robin had died not of a broken neck, but strangulation. Some people believe he'd strangled where he hung. Others argued that he'd been strangled on the ground and strung up in the tree as an afterthought. In the mind of the town and of Robin's family, there was little question that Robin had met foul play of some sort. Exactly what sort or by whom left everyone at a loss. Twice since the 1920s, women of prominent family had been murdered by jealous husbands, but these were old scandals, the parties concerned long deceased, and every now and then a black man turned up dead in Alexandria. But as most whites were quick to point out, these killings were generally done by other Negroes. Over primarily Negro concerns, a dead child was a different matter, frightening to everyone, rich and poor, black and white, and no one could think who might have done such a thing or why. Around the neighborhood there was talk of a mysterious prowler, and years after Robin's death people still claimed to see him. He was, by all accounts, a giant of a man, but after this the description diverged. Sometimes he was black, sometimes white, sometimes he bore dramatic distinguishing marks such as a missing finger, a clubfoot, a livid scar across one cheek. He was said to be a rogue hired man who had strangled a Texas senator's child and fed it to the pigs. An ex rodeo clown luring little children to their deaths with fancy lariat tricks. A psychopathic half-wit wanted in 11 states escaped from the state mental hospital at Whitfield. But though parents in Alexandria warned their children about him, and though his massive form was regularly sighted limping around the vicinity of George Street each Halloween, the prowler remained an elusive figure. Every tramp and itinerant and window peeper for 100 miles had been rounded up and questioned after the little Cleve boy's death, but the investigation had turned up nothing. And while nobody liked to think of a killer walking around free, the fear persisted. The particular fear was that he still prowled the neighborhood, watching children at play from a discreetly parked sedan. It was the people in the town who talked about this sort of thing. Robin's family never discussed it, ever. What Robin's family talked about was Robin. They told anecdotes from baby days and kindergarten and Little League, all the sweet and funny and inconsequential things anyone remembered he'd ever said or done. His old aunts recalled mountains of trivia, toys he'd had, clothes he'd worn, teachers he'd liked or hated, games he'd played, dreams he'd recounted, things he'd disliked and wished for and most loved. Some of this was accurate, some of it was not. A good bit of it no one had any way of knowing, but when the Cleves chose to agree on some subjective matter, it became automatically and quite irrevocably the truth without any of them being aware of the collective alchemy which had made it so. The mysterious, conflicted circumstances of Robin's death were not subject to this alchemy. Strong as the Cleves' revisionist instincts were, there was no plot to be imposed on these fragments, no logic to be inferred, no lesson in hindsight, no moral to this story. Robin himself, or what they remembered of him, was all they had, and their exquisite delineation of his character, painstakingly ornamented over a number of years, greatest masterpiece. Because he had been such an engaging little stray of a boy, and because his whims and peculiarities were precisely why they had all loved him so, in their reconstructions, the impulsive quickness of the living Robin came through in places almost painfully clear, and then he would practically be dashing down the street on his bicycle past you, leaning forward, hair blown back, stepping hard on the pedals so the bike wobbled slightly, a fitful, capricious, breathing child. But this clarity was deceptive, lending treacherous verisimilitude to what was largely a fabular whole. For in other places, the story was worn nearly transparent, radiant but oddly featureless, as the lives of saints sometimes are. How Robin would have loved this, the aunts used to say fondly. How Robin would have laughed. In truth, Robin had been a giddy, fickle child, somber at odd moments, practically hysterical at others. And in life, this unpredictability had been a great part of his charm, but his younger sisters, who had never in any proper sense known him at all, nonetheless grew up certain of their dead brother's favorite color, red, his favorite book, The Wind in the Willows, and his favorite character in it, Mr. Toad. His favorite flavor of ice cream, chocolate, and his favorite baseball team, the Cardinals, and 1,000 other things which they, being living children, and preferring chocolate ice cream one week and peach the next, were not sure they knew about themselves. Were not even sure they knew about themselves. Consequently, the relationship with their dead brother was of the most intimate sort, his strong, bright, immutable character shining changelessly against the vagueness and vacillation of their own characters and the characters of people that they knew. And they grew up believing that this was due to some rare angelic incandescence of nature on Robin's part, and not at all to the fact that he was dead. Dad, put a book under here so this thing does not sag. There we go. Robin's younger sisters had grown up to be very different from Robin and very different from each other. Allison was now 16, a mousy little girl who bruised and sunburned easily and cried at nearly everything. What am I doing? I'm moving around and I'm reading a book. It's uncomfortable holding a phone up in the air over a book while you read. What are you doing? Allison was now 16, a mousy little girl who bruised and sunburned easily and cried at nearly everything. She had grown up unexpectedly to be the pretty one. Long legs, fawn red hair, liquid fawn brown eyes. All her grace was in her vagueness. Her voice was soft, her manner languid, her features blurred and dreamy, and to her grandmother Edie, who prized sparkle and high color, she was something of a disappointment. Allison's bloom was delicate and artless, like the flowering grass in June, consisting wholly of a youthful freshness that no one knows better than Edie was the first thing to go. She daydreamed, she sighed a lot, her walk was awkward, shuffling, with toes turned in, and so was her speech. Still, she was pretty in her shy, milky white way, and the boys in her class had started to call her on the telephone. And the boys, oh, pardon. Edie had observed her, eyes downcast, face burning red, with the receiver caught between her shoulder and ear, pushing the toe of her Oxford back and forth and stammering with humiliation. Why the fuck did that turn off? It's very disappointing. Why did you turn off, buddy? All right. Now I got to stop it.